Good morning. We are on page 433 of the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, close to the end, the last two pages of this long discourse. And what we're learning is essentially a summation of all the themes that were discussed, but namely, and through the language of the verse that the Maimer, the discourse begins with, Mika Hashem Elokeinu, Hamagbi L'Sheves, and Hamashpili Lirois b'Shamayim v'Haaretz, that we're talking about ultimately the ultimate divine unity is not just that existence connects with the divine as it relates to existence, meaning the more diminished and limited flow of the divine within existence, and not just the divine beyond existence, Yichud Ilah, Yichud Tata, Yichud Ilah, respectively, but to the joining of Hamagbi and Hamashpili all as one, where in the divine there is no Milo Mata, there's no higher and lower. So though we exist in a world of hierarchy and structure and time and space, that in our world, we should be able to experience that state that is not just beyond existence, but beyond, that can join the two together. That's the ultimate fusion, what he called earlier, the unification of the two levels of unity that we contemplate on in Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and here, Mika Hashem Elokeinu, Hamagbi L'Sheves, Hamashpili Lirois b'Shamayim v'Haaretz. As he explained at length, each word, literally each word and each part of this phrase, how it all comes together to create this ultimate seamless unity. And the process, as we learned yesterday, is that we begin the Mashpili and the Mashgbi and Mashpili. The Yud of a Magbi is the same as the level of the Yud of Mashpili because they become one. The Yud of Chochma of Torah that combines both Or Chezer and Or Yashar. And the order is Hamagbi first, because first we're talking about fulfilling the purpose of it all. And the purpose, even though the lowest of worlds is the lowest in Ishtalshalos, but from the point of view of the Kavon Elyener, Seif Maisa b'Machshavet Chila, that's where it all began. The Sava Kadosh Baruch Hu and Atzmus to have a Direh B'Tachtenim. So the Or Chezer through our Torah mitzvahs from below that elevates the world comes first Hamagbi L'Sheves to create an integration that reaches all the way to the highest levels. That highest level is now drawn down, Mashpili biyud chacham the Torah, to radiate below in a form of Er Yosha shehelu v'nimshach mamaylo lamato, and to the point that reaches a level that's higher than Mailo Mato, exactly as it is above. That's how it comes down below. And Torah is in a way, the interface, because the Torah is the one that draws that through Torah the world was created, and therefore it brings that higher level of that which is beyond Mailamata into the world that has a Mailamata. Gambi Shtalshal is the same of Mamala. You also experience this total seamless fusion. That's what we concluded yesterday on page 432. Okay. So we shall continue now. The next paragraph begins on the next page, 433. The pages can be found at ayimbeis.com. Now, while I'm explaining this, I am keeping in mind that this is going to flow right from here. We're going to go back to Ayimbeis and bring everything we've learned in this Maimer, including the Alter Rebbe's Maimer. This is the basis of this one, to understand Ayimbeis, both the context and also the continuation where Ayin Beis did not continue because Rebbe Rashab did not finish writing it. So the next section we're going to learn now is connected to something I've pointed out a number of times and really very relevant to Ayin Beis. The focus on the word Lirois. We have not really explained yet in the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, why does it say Lirois? Mashpili Lirois b'Shamayim v'Haaretz. In Torah we did learn it, just one line, but that line contains a tremendous amount of information that's especially relevant to Ayin Beis. And of course, I would have loved to see how the Rebbe Rashab would have developed and spelled it out, but we're going to have to do it because Rebbe Rashab did not. So the focus on the word liris in Torah, before we learn this inside here, is keep in mind liris is to see, not just to understand and not just to hear. And this is in direct contrast, the Alter Rebbe says, to Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That's Shmiya. If you may remember, the process that we began with was, in the whole theme of this mimer was, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, is the neshama that comes down below on its own. The Nefesh Elikis on its own through contemplating and davening, through tefillah. The Birchis Yetzer and the preparations before Shema, but then it comes to Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, that the neshama comes to understand, to hear, Shema, and internalize, and understand the divine unity of Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, which is Yichud Elah and Yichud Tata, and how they come together, and in turn informs the animal soul, which leads to V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha, b'shnei yetzarecha, both the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara. They said that's the Nefesh Elikis on its own. Then comes Ner Mitzvah. The mitzvah has an additional zgula to transform the world and to elevate the animal soul. Then comes V'teira that brings Amshachim Mamayla Lamata. The neshama works Mamata Lamayla, especially through davening. Mitzvahs is a combination of Mamat Lamayla, Mamayla Lamata. Then comes Teira, which is completely unadulterated, undiluted, and unfiltered air as it is above. That's how it comes down below. And then he explained that Hamagbi L'Shevis is mitzvahs from the bottom up. So yes, it reaches into the Etzem, but if you want Giluyim in the fullest sense, to see, that's Teira. Oyer creates Riyah. That's why Hamashpili Lirois, and Riyah is deeper than Shmiya. So as much as Shmiya is really more from the bottom up, that's how Shmiya works. We hear something. We don't see it with our own eyes. But Torah gives us the ability to see with our own eyes. So the ultimate combination is going to be Shmiya and Riyah, that we internalized it through hearing about it, and we also are achieving the highest levels of revelation from Torah Lirois. So I said this briefly, I believe, when we learned it in Torah. I probably mentioned it several times, but in Ayin Beis, this comes a central theme, because if you remember in Ayin Beis, after he begins on page 1350 about Ner Mitzvah V'Torah and Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, he says, Nidali Levayra Inyan, he explains with the Inyan of Riyah, of seeing. Remember the power of sight down below that requires an outside siyua, a light for us to be able to see in the dark. That's the light that a neshama gets through Torah, through mitzvahs, Einei Ha'eda, the malachim, who are the eyes, the supervisors. But then we reach the higher level of Einenu Me'ires, Kishemesh Yireach, that the eyes themselves will see without a siyua, La'asad Lave, because we'll reach Etzem Koyach Hariyah, the way Riyah is in its core, doesn't need any light. It itself has the power to see. So Torah, therefore, plays the role of revealing to us that we should see the divine in our lives, but ultimately you want to have the combination of Torah and mitzvahs and neshama through davening that brings us all together. So we'll elaborate a lot more. I'll talk a lot more about this. But the next piece is going to talk about Lirois, and I wanted to just emphasize the importance of this word, Lirois. As I said, this is based on the Torah that says Riyah is higher than Shmiya. The words in Torah, before we read here, I'll just point out to you exactly, is on page, in the Maimer in Torah, right here on top of 39a. So he says, "V'shamu lireis b'chinas Riyah v'izgalus ein sof baruch hu lamata kamay lamayla v'lei b'chinas Shema Yisrael dahainu yizbonu shabenefesh alikishi b'chinas Shmiya bolvad elo kamay shekosav ki ayin ba'ayin yiro." So the Alter Rebbe makes it very clear, very short, but says clearly the level of Riyah and izgalus above as below. That is the ultimate revelation. But we want a revelation not of Ein Sof alone. We want the Etzem. And the Etzem is achieved through the Erchezer of Avedim Umata L'mayla. So Shmiya is the process, the beginning process, but reaches all the way the highest levels. But the revelation of those highest levels, drawing it down, Er Yasher, like we just said, from top down, in a seamless way, is the Torah of Hamashpili Lirois. Okay.
I just posted that for anyone who's curious. I just posted that portion of the Alter Rebbe in the WhatsApp thread.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll continue reading on page 433. V'zehu, here's what he says. V'zehu hamashpili lirois dafke b'riyah. And this is the meaning when he says mashpili lirois dafke riyah. In other words, he goes downward, the energy that is flowing down, the divine is flowing down, lirois, to see in a form of vision. Though we said earlier, if you remember when he spoke about Magbi and Mashpili, he said the two forms of Yediyah, a general bird's eye view, that God sees the big picture. And then there's Ashgacha, and Yediyah specific as he looks at the details. So he says Ashgacha v'Yediyah levad, which may suggest that it's only a supervision and a yediyah, his awareness. Nevertheless, so yes, it manifests in a form of providence and of yediyah, but its root comes from chochma of the inner chochma, the inner chochma of Era Teda, of the light of Teda Kiyadua, the chol riyah hu b'chinas chochma dafke. As it's known that every form of riyah, so in other words, you could say it's an awareness, but he's saying this awareness is not just an awareness, it's in the level of riyah. It's a level of riyah, the chubchinas, and that's after the level of chochmah, the clarity of chochmah. K'moy ezu chochem, like we say, ezu chochem haroya es hanoilad. Who is the wise one? The one that sees the future, that sees the consequences. The riyas ha'ayin ba meriya ayin ha'seichel b'primis ha'chochmah dafke. Because the eye that sees the discernment, or you could say the visualization of the eye, comes from the ayin of the seichel, of intelligence. Let me explain what that means. The expression Chochma of Bereishis, that a Chacham, his eyes are in his head. Obviously, a person with physical eyes can see things, but they're seeing and they're seeing. Same two people can look at something, and the Chacham will see something that the other person doesn't see. Because seeing ultimately is also a deeper level of intelligence. However, we're not just talking about intelligence without sight. We're talking about both. So it's a clarity that a Chacham has that begins, like he says, Sharsha begins So when you say to see something, so like for example, we talk here about loss and love, we will be able to see godliness. It doesn't just mean we'll physically see something that looks godly. It means our experience of godliness will be like today, like we see something, not just hearing about it. So Shmi is a perfect contrast. When you hear about something, it can resonate with you, but it's still not the same level of hisamtus, is the expression of Chassidus, a level of resonance and clarity. When you say Ein adei mishmiya l'riyah, hearing is not compared to seeing, or Ein eid nasa dayan, a witness cannot be a judge. And the expression is because once he saw it, he loses his objectivity. A judge has to be someone that's able to hear evidence and witnesses. If the judge himself saw the crime or saw whatever the events that we're talking about, he gets biased. You'll say that's the best thing. He saw it himself. Yeah, but sometimes what you see is not always the whole picture. So the Torah says clearly that a witness cannot be a judge. He has to recuse himself if he witnessed it. Because you need to have a certain distance. And seeing something creates a certain reality. I saw it. So Riyah has that tremendous power of Hisamtus that Shmiya doesn't have. On the other hand, Shmiya is more understandable. Like when I see, let's say, a beautiful sunset, or a beautiful painting, or a beautiful natural sight, and then I share it with you, I'll share some of it and you'll capture some of it, but it's not like you saw it yourself. You may get excited by my excitement. On the other hand, the details of it, I say I saw a beautiful sunset. You'll say, what did it look like? I have to start describing the details. The color, the colors, the horizon. So Shmi is good for putting together the picture, getting the details, getting the story. Riyah is the hisamtus, is that profound effect that it has on us when we see something with our own eyes. So the ultimate experience is Riyah. Shmiya is more internalized. Riyah, however, is more real. So what he's saying here is that Chochma, that Riyah is rooted in Chochma, the Ayin HaSeichel Primis HaChochma. That's the ultimate visualization. Like we say, Enecha Pekuches, his eyes, open eyes. So as I said, someone can see something and their eyes are still closed, meaning they don't really appreciate it. They really didn't see it. Or as the Rebbe once told somebody, some people sleep at my Farbrengen with their eyes closed, and most people sleep with their eyes open. You can have your eyes open, and also the Rebbe says, open your eyes and see the Geula. What does that mean? My eyes are open. But you have to see things, really see things. You don't just look, you have to connect the dots, be able to see the patterns, and see the forces at work that are beneath the surface. Okay, so all this is coming to emphasize that when it comes to Torah, the purest form of Torah, that's why it's light. It provides this clarity of Riyah, Hamashpili Lirois, Riyah, which is rooted in Chochma. This parentheses, which sounds so parenthetical, if you just read it on its own, actually becomes a tremendous foundation in Ayin Beis. We elaborate at length about Einei Ha'eda. We'll get back to that. But here he says in the parentheses, and that's why Chacham are called the eyes of the people, the eyes of the nation. Why are they called the eyes? All the people have eyes, because they're the guides. They provide clarity. They provide direction. That's called an eye, like a person who's leading the way is like serving as our eyes to direct us where we should go. What do eyes do? If your eyes are closed, you don't know to go right or left. You don't know what's dangerous, what's healthy. You bump into things. So the Einei Ha'eda, the Chachamim of a generation, the nation, are the eyes of the community, of the Eda, of the people. They provide that clarity, that direction, and that guidance. All this is that Chochma is connected to Riyah. U'Moshe, like it was by Moshe Rabbeinu. Shoyu nishmason, the primi is the ma de Chochma, who's neshama. I'm not sure why it says nishmason, not nishmasoi. Okay, but that's what he says. Was the premius of ma of Chochma. That's why Moshe is called V'nochnu ma, and Moshe has the letters ma, the bittul of Chochma. So what was the story? Hoye b'bchinas Riyah. Moshe was in a state of Riyah. He's compared to a person who sees. That's why it says about his nevuah, his prophecy, that he saw it like clearly, like a spaklaria me'ira, with transparency. The other Nevi'im saw things more through a reflection. It tells us to look at a page. Let me see what the Maramokim for Tov Kuf Lamed Gimel. Let me see a second. Oh. In Parsha Bracha, at the end of the Torah, it talks about Moshe Vayar Reishislei. Trying to see the context. Just a second. Okay. They're clearly talking
I
about Moshe.
I just posted it.
Yeah. Okay, so now, v'kach yuvan lamayla. Now we'll apply this lamayla to Hamashpili Lirois. And this is how we'll also understand it above. V'mashakasa mishamayim hibit. So if you recall, he brought earlier the verse, from heaven he gazed. Shahabata zu, this gaze, hu b'b'chinas de chochma, hapnimius de teira er. This riyah is the vision from chochma, the pnimius of teira er, shutzeifa umabit. He looks and gazes. Ad seif kol aderes. To the point that the clarity is so clear that he can see till the end of all generations. Biskira achas, in one glance, like one snapshot. Like in general, when you see something, you see the whole picture as one. Yes, it has details, but you have a snapshot. When you look at something, when you hear something, the only way to hear it is piece by piece. But when you look at something, you see the whole as an entirety. You can then break it down. But the riyah is meklolis mereish l'seif ke'echad. From the top to the bottom to the end as one. Kachu b'riyah de chochma. So is it with the visualization of chochma, shenikri staklus ha-chochma ba'ayin ha-seichel. Histaklus, in other words, histaklus means generally, istakl is like a deep gaze. The istakl is the gaze of chochma with the eye of the intelligence. So when a wise person looks at something, you know he has a penetrating gaze, you can call it. Something about his eyesight is going to be more powerful. I don't mean physical, better eyesight, but he just sees things. You see a chacham, they'll see things that others don't see. That's why usually when you find shrewd criminals or people who want to keep undercover, they stay away from the more intelligent person from an chacham who can see through things. You expose yourself more to people who may not see it all. Not sure what he means. I think he means to say it's in the state of ayin and bittul, and helam klal adayin. Still a helam, meaning it's not in the details, it's the klal. Not sure what he means by ayin vehelam klal adayin. I mean, initially I would say it's still in a state of ayin and helam, or you could say hayim vehelam klal, that it's completely concealed. I don't think he means that. I think he means ayin vehelam klal adayin. Yeah, he means that it's still in that one gaze, one picture, so it's still in a state of ayin. And afterwards, nimshach umispashir b'derech protius, then from there it extends. It transmits and extends in details, and the details of details, which is called shanikra yediyah protis. Then it comes into a specific awareness of the details. Kameshakasav hamevin el kol. We said this, we learned this earlier as well. Hamevin el kol, that he understands all of it. So that comes after that initial so-called singular gaze of riyas of primis chochma. Shazel comes the maven. This is already maven. Maven is already bina. Shazel bebina dafke. That's already bina, which is the level of shmiya. Actually, bina's understanding. Shubchinas hasoga v'tfisa b'chol prat uprat. That's already grasping and understanding it in every detail. The aim prat beloy klal canal. And like we learned earlier, every detail came from a klal. First there was the whole picture, and then you broke it down into details. As we discussed earlier, the dai l'mevi. And enough for the discerning ones. Okay, so he explained what the lirois is that higher state of awareness consciousness, of that higher state, and then from there it comes down into the details that we talked about, yediyah klalis, yediyah pratis. Yeah, back when he began discussing this a few pages back. Okay, let me stop here if anybody wants to ask anything.
Yeah, I have a question about this whole paragraph. I'm a little confused. whether he's talking about God's vision, if you will, his perspective and his resolution. I mean, resolution in terms of vision, granularity, or ours as human beings who can, let's say, see reality, see the truth through as a result of learning Torah, but through the clarity that Torah provides, or both. It seems like he talks about both here, and he shifts between the two. First, he talks about it's not just hashkach v'yediyah, and there he's talking about the Eibishter, but then he goes on to talk about Einei Ha'eda, and then you see it's a little, to me it's confusing.
Well, it's just a set. It's not just this paragraph. It's the whole theme. Whether the verse Mika Hashem Elokeinu, the pasuk is talking about God, who is like God, Hamashpili Lirois, that elevate all the way up to the highest levels, like he said, of Asmis, and then Hamashpili Lirois, and draws down and is drawn down into seeing into existence all the way from the top to the bottom. So the pasuk is talking about God and our understanding of God. Mika Hashem Elokeinu, that's what we're saying. We're talking about Hashem. But the goal of it is to appreciate what God is like, so we can then try as best as our ability to experience it. So the answer is it's not just this paragraph, it's the whole theme that he's talking about altogether. He's talking about the three, like I said, Magbi and Mashpili are two levels, Yichudi Lo, Yichudi Tata, to the point they become like one by Hashem Elokeinu, by the Eibishter. And now we are invoking that through our contemplation, like we say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, that the neshamas who have that unique connection to the Etzem are in this world down below, are invoking and saying, okay, this is what we are experiencing and trying to experience to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I said I see. No puns intended, but thank you.
Okay, good. Are there any other questions? Okay. So let's continue. V'kach yuvan b'zeh. And with this, we'll also understand, and so too we'll understand, because remember, it's Torah that illuminates on this level of Riyah. When we do Torah mitzvahs from below, and when we daven, let's say Shema Yisrael, and all the contemplation, being that it's from the bottom up, it's on our terms. Yes, and our terms, we're elevating ourselves to the highest level, to the Etzem, because that's what Hashem wants. Seif Ma'asav Machshavat Chili, He wants us to do their work. But then the question you can ask is, can we really experience the divine in its purest form? So Torah answers, yes, that's what Torah is. Torah is given, God is giving us Himself through Torah, His full being. So when you have the combination of Ara Voida Magbi L'Shevis, like he said, and then for the same level of Etzem comes down now. In Hamashpili Lirois, you have the best of both. You have the Gilui and Riyah of the Etzem that's higher than Gilui and Riyah. And that's where Torah comes and plays such a central role. So he says now, what we just said is also understood, the premise of Chochma Lo Shebeteirer, Shemeir Ubo Ma'atzmis Ein Sof Baruch Hu Mamish. That radiates, illuminates, and comes from the core of Ein Sof Mamish, Shenikra Chakim V'loi B'chochmi Yediyah Klal. This is a language from the Torah, from the Alter Rebbe's Maimer. It's called Chakim V'loi B'chochmi Yediyah. It's not just that Torah is wisdom. It's a wisdom, but not with knowable knowledge. It's God's wisdom. So if you only had Torah, and you didn't have mitzvahs, and you didn't have a neshama coming down below, you'd have a very high revelation of the divine. But here, because it's coming from our Aveda below, the Ur Chayzer, and also Torah, so you're getting, as I said, the best of both. So now Torah, you've triggered the levels of Etzem to radiate through Torah into Riyah. Shemislabish be'esis the Torah shebiksav, and that wisdom is mislabish, manifests in the letters of Torah shebiksav, written Torah, kumei va'asa miravaves kedesh ha'elyon. So Eisius comes from the word va'asa, from the word it draws, like asa from the word came, it arrived. It's like a journey. Eisius are like carriers, channels. And from where? From Revavas Kedesh Elyon, from the highest levels of supernal holiness. Shahu ba bebechinas ayin behelam klal. He used again the word ayin behelam klal. I've not seen that expression. I'm trying to bechinas ayin behelam klal. It's an interesting expression. He just used it 4 lines from and then the last paragraph. So it's coming from a level of ayin behelam klal. Sounds like an ayin that's completely concealed. Before he said klal more as general, and then it breaks down to details. I have to study a little more what he means by that. But it's pretty clear what level he is. Ukiyadua, and it's known as it's known. Shatei ba b'derech klal uprat. Again, klal. I think klal here doesn't mean entire. He means all encompassing, like it's all like klal and prat. Ein behelam. B'chinas ayin. B'chinas ein behelam. Unless it's not ayin, maybe b'chinas ein behelam. No, b'chinas ein behelam. Okay, let me read it. Then I'll try to see if I can figure out more. Kidua shateda comes b'derech klal prat, like you said before about the klal prat. It comes in a derech klal. Teda speaks first in general terms, and then details. V'hainu b'teda sheksa b'chinas klal. In the written teda is more in general, all encompassing. Shekelu be'esis halolu, that it encompasses in these letters of the written teda, behelam, in concealed way. Kol masha darshu chazal b'teda shebal peh. All that the chazal, our sages, they derive or they darshan from these letters in teda shebiksav, in teda shebal peh. K'Rabbi Akiva, like we say about Rabbi Akiva. Shal shall call kates v'kates tili tilim. Every kates, every edge. Kates is like the crown. Every crown. The kates is like every top edge of the letter. Not just from every letter, but even the crowns on the top of the letter. He learned tile tilim, towers upon towers. Meaning that first it's just a kates. A kates is just a dot. Like we have a yud. There's the kates alien is like the dot, the top part of the yud that goes upward. So he learned from every kates, towers upon towers of information. You see there, klal and prat, ukahai gavna, and similar other expressions that we find the same idea. Umispashid beproti protis bevov sviris bevov sidre mishnah. Bevov sidre mishnah. And in Teda Shebal Peh, that which is a klal, Teda Shebekav, extends and spreads out in detail in the 6 orders of the Mishnah. Shisha Sidre Mishnah, Vov Sidre Mishnah. So in Chochma, it's all a Nakuda. And then it comes into the 6 Midas, we learned earlier, the 6 orders of the Mishnah. Zman Nokat, Zroim, Moyed, Noshim, Nezikin, Kochim, and Taris. Shazeu Gamken Ki Yediyah Klolos Uprotis. This too is like a general Yediyah, a general awareness, Uprotis, Bechitzenius. And then more specific as it comes out more to the outer dimension. Ubedas Elyon v'das Tachten. And a state of a higher Das Elyon, a higher awareness and a lower awareness. Miyesh la'ayin, from the yesh to the ayin, b'chochmeh. So first it comes Das Elyon from the yesh, the yesh amiti, from the higher yesh, into the ayin of chochmeh. Uma'ayin liyesh b'bina. And from the ayin of chochmeh to the yesh of bina. So it's made yesh la'ayin, and the ma'ayin liyesh, shein sefer v'sipur de Teda shebiksav. That's what's called a sefer v'sipur, a sefer v'sipur. Sefer is the book, sipur is the story, the narrative, that is called Teda shebiksav. So you see Teda shebiksav like a book, b'chinas mashpia, it's a state of mashpia, like a transmitter, the source, mashpia, ketipa shekalelis, like a drop of water, a drop that encompasses in it protehe vorim. Here he means tipa, like the drop of seed. That in this one drop, it encompasses all the detailed limbs of the vlad of a child. The Teda Shebal Peh is bechinas mekabel, shemispashid beramache vorim kiyadua. So the Teda is like mashpia, which is like the tipa, the seed, which encompasses all the details. And then Torah Shebiksav is the Makabel that receives from the Mashpia, where it extends and breaks down into 248 limbs, specific limbs. Okay, I'm going to stop here because first I have to finish earlier a bit today. I'm going to stop here, but let me stop if anybody has any questions. We'll read on. Tomorrow I'll continue, but right now I'm going to stop here at this end of this paragraph, at the end of this parentheses, rather.
So you're starting the Torah. You're saying that the Torah, the Biksav, the written Torah, is the beginning of Bina, or are you saying that?
No, Bina is Torah Shabbat Peh.
That's
Torah Shabbat is Chochma.
Yeah. That's what I thought. But then you said it differently. Okay.
Rabbi Jacobson, it's Robin. Is it okay if my son asks the question? He was just listening this morning.
Sure.
Hey, Rabbi, I just had a question about the difference between, you said an objective view, but you can't have an objective view as a judge if you're a witness. But my question to you is then who is the objective viewer at the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai? Because all the Jewish people witnessed the giving of the Torah.
Well, that's what made it so real for them, because they saw it with their own eyes.
Yeah, but that contradicts the point that you were trying to make before, that you can't be a judge. So how did the people judge that they knew that they saw Hashem when there was no objective viewer?
The giving of the Torah was not a court case where somebody committed a crime that you had to reveal something that was perhaps that needs justice. The experiences, that would be like asking, so what's the value of experiencing anything in life? We see things all the time, and we don't need to be judges. In the case of a court case where there's two sides, and one person says something happened, the other person say it didn't happen, or they say it happened a different way. So there you need some objective party that needs to listen to all the evidence and all the witnesses. The experience of Sinai is like the experience when you go and you see nature. You'll say, I'm not going to allow myself to see a beautiful sight because it's going to cause me to be in awe, and I won't be objective anymore. There's nothing wrong with having a very beautiful experience that resonates with such truth. So the Sinai experience was exactly that, a visually resonating experience that transformed them. And that's that. And those that experienced it did not need any proof one way or the other. Once they experienced it, they experienced it. It's like someone who falls in love. And you say, this is my experience. I completely am consumed with it. So there's not a question of challenge. I mean, if that's how I would explain it.
I didn't say anything. I don't know why you used the court case as an example. I was just saying, as a people who are objective.
The case of a judge and a witness is a court case. Okay. That something happened.
No,
I'm not. The judge witnessed, let's say, a crime, so he cannot serve as a judge. The case of judge and witness, what I'm saying is regarding a court case, not regarding life experiences. In life, we experience all the time visual experiences that resonate with us, yes, and we lose our objectivity in a way once we see something.
What I want to understand is, why did he bring that in the first place? The whole point here is to talk about the penetration of Rhea, and I don't understand why he dropped that comment at all.
Which comment?
The comment that a judge that
I dropped it. I used it as an example to explain the resonance of seeing. He doesn't bring that here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hold on.
I was doing.
That's, if I may just have like a semi-conversation. I'm listening. I'm just curious because you said, so the point was like the original point you were saying was about how light or how things were bringing light, correct? Was that the original point that you were trying to make, correct?
I was just talking about the resonance of visual versus hearing about something versus seeing it. Seeing is believing, like, for example, versus hearing about it.
And I understand. What I was saying for me is, when I was thinking of that, I was relating it to the observation effect, and also if and I'm not saying that God didn't give the Torah to the people at Mount Sinai. I'm saying because they all witnessed it, because of the analogy that we were using, because they were all witnessing the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, there was no other objective, and there couldn't be any other objective person there, because if the other person who's objective there would be watching it as well, and then they wouldn't be objective, it would be a ra'eh. So ra'eh is, and to me, what I thought was ra'eh is a human perception. It ends in, it equals 9, which is the number of man, because Adam equals 9. But if you think of the Sfirot, because there's 10 vessels on the Sfirot.
We have to take this afterwards because I have a very urgent meeting right now. And we can continue this later. I can't continue right now.
Thank you, Rabbi. Sorry
it's a fair
about that.
discussion, but I have to end right now because I must run to a very urgent meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, so I'm going